Hi, I'm meteorologist Alexandra Cranford in the WWL Weather Center, and we're getting you a forecast update about what's happening with our fog and addressing especially why we're seeing the fog not only these mornings in the past couple of weeks, but also why in particular this morning it was so patchy. We do have days where we have widespread dense fog, and that's where you're driving and you can see it from the moment you step out your door and all through your commute. But this morning we had patches where it became extremely dense very quickly. That is one of the most dangerous types of fog to drive in, actually, because you're going a normal speed, some people unfortunately probably speeding, and then you hit the patch of fog and you have to slow down really fast and you have almost no visibility. So here's our setup in general. High pressure is centered off to the east at the surface. So around this, the clockwise circulation around a high pressure, it's bringing in south winds generally. That is bringing any of the smoke from the New Orleans east wild marsh fires off to the north. It's pushing it to the north. So we were thinking, actually, even going into this week, we might see fog issues more north of the fire as opposed to the west, like we saw in New Orleans itself and in the metro area over the weekend. Now, it's something kind of interesting this morning is that we have mostly south or southwest winds, but look at this, a little bit of an influence here with very light northerly winds around that general area, around Lake Pontchartrain to the eastern side, around the Twin Spans and so forth. And so what we have is fog being able to sort of settle in here into an area where it might be hitting those very light northerly winds and then setting up in this specific spot. So again, if you have the wildfire with south winds, it really depends on where these plumes of smoke are going, and they can go straight to the north, hit those northerly winds, and maybe settle in around here. And notice when the winds are not very light, you can often see that fog building. You kind of see that what we call radiation fog, where you have a cool night, you have south winds bringing in some warm air that cools down, and it eventually reaches the dew point temperature, which is one of these meteorological terms that we use, which is the temperature at which the air becomes saturated with water droplets. So, and the water droplets no longer can remain vapor, and they condense and form those clouds at the surface, which of course is fog. And then of course the big thing that we've talked about over the past couple of weeks is that with the smoke particles in the air, first of all, you know, if you drive into smoke, you're going to see a little bit of lower visibility, but also it contributes to the fog formation because there are all these little bits of smoke, these small particles. And these are all what we call more condensation nuclei. These are more particles on which the water vapor can condense. So when you have a situation that's forming fog, plus you have more smoke particles, that's why we have this term super fog, which is a kind of newish term, but it is set in place, or it is defined as both the smoke and the fog, both of those contributing to the fog formation. And again, it really depends on the winds blowing those plumes of smoke in specific spots. And this morning it was especially off to the north toward the Irish Bayou, New Orleans east, and almost to the Twin Span Slidell areas. So that's a quick look at what we saw this morning and why we're looking at that potential for the patchy fog. Also, patchy fog sometimes forms especially with lighter winds in general. So it looks like the next couple of days will continue with that potential for morning fog with those winds from the south. But also if we see the winds drop off, that can allow smoke to just kind of settle in a particular area, or fog to settle maybe near bridges or bodies of water, and that would contribute to the patchy effect as well, where you're driving and it's mostly clear and then you hit a wall of fog. Again, that's a quick look. We'll have more coming up for you throughout our newscasts on this Tuesday and through the rest of this week.